Hello everybody and welcome back to a new video. We have a cute little special guest for today's video. She obviously just doesn't want to lay down. She will probably go for a nap in a second, but this is Willow in case you didn't know. Anyways, welcome back to today's video. We're going to be doing a September and October reading wrap up. Just because in September I didn't think I had read enough and a lot of them were on Kindle, so I didn't want to do its own video. So I thought I would just put September and October together and show you all of the books that I've read in those months. So I do have a lot of books that I've read either on Kindle or listened to the audiobook version of. So I'm kind of going to go through both months, but I'm going to do the physical books first, then the Kindle and audiobook reads, so we can kind of do it that way. So they're not going to be in like order of how I read them. So I have read quite a few books in the last few months, but in September I actually read 11 books in total. So let's just get into those. It feels like so long ago that I read these first few books, but I read Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one had been on my TBR for a while, but I just never seemed to get around to it, but I'm so glad that I did. So this follows Carrie Soto, who is the greatest tennis player in the world, but then basically someone comes up to challenge her titles and she just doesn't want to let them have it. She doesn't want to let them take her titles away from her, so she comes out of retirement to basically fight for her titles back. I absolutely loved this. I really do love Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing style. Everything that she writes is so believable to me. Like, I obviously do not like tennis. I don't watch tennis. I know literally nothing about tennis, but this had me so invested. And the way that she writes just literally makes you feel like she is talking about real people. I was rooting for her so much. And then there's sort of the feminist tones, or kind of just talking about how women are treated in general, how women are treated in sports, how women are treated in any kind of profession. And I just loved it. I think I rated it a 4.75 just because selfishly the ending did not go how I wanted it to go, but I did still really enjoy it and it was a really good solid read. Then I read Some Kind of Perfect, which is the last book in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series. This is book 10, and this one is kind of set further on than the other ones. It kind of follows their children, their lives still, but yeah, it kind of focuses more on their kids and kind of like how their lives as adults and as parents is developing, I suppose. This series could do no wrong in my eyes. I read it at the beginning of the year, so I did put this one off for a pretty long time just because I wasn't ready to say goodbye to this world and to these characters. But I finally just wanted to do it. I just wanted to dive back into this little universe, so I decided to finish it, and of course I rated it a 5 stars. I just loved it. I feel like it perfectly rounded everything up. I don't know whether to start the sort of like spin-off series about the children. If you have read, please let me know if you think it is worth getting into it, because I really want to reread these books anyways, and this will forever hold a very special place in my heart because these characters are just some of my favourites ever. And then I read A Little Life, and I do not even know where to start with this book. If you haven't heard about this book, I would most definitely check any trigger and content warnings because it is very, very heavy. But it basically follows 4 friends in New York over like a huge time frame. It spans them in college up until they're in like their 50s, 60s, I think. So it follows Jude, Willem, Malcolm and JB, but it does kind of centre more so around Jude. He has a lot of issues, a lot of past trauma, and it kind of focuses on how that affects his daily life, his relationships. He has just been through a lot. Like, a lot does not even cover it. It is almost unnecessary at times, the things that he has like endured and experienced, and it did feel a little bit over the top at times to me. Like, it just felt like this poor guy could never catch a break, but also the writing style was just so beautiful. Like, every single line just made me want to cry. Like, this is a book that I will think about for the rest of my life, not even exaggerating. This will stay with me forever. Then I read Things Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is the 3rd book in the Knock 'Em Out series, the highly anticipated story of Lucian and Sloane. Now, I feel like what I'm going to say on this one is probably not going to be groundbreaking because I feel like a lot of people have said the same. But if you don't know about this book, it basically follows on from the other 2 books in the Knock 'Em Out series, which is a small little town And this book focuses on Lucian and Sloane, who Lucian is friends of Knox and Nash, who we see in the first two books. They are brothers. He is kind of like their third honorary brother, and Sloane is the town librarian. And in the first two books we see like little snippets of them. They kind of have like an enemies to lovers kind of vibe. Like they hate each other, cannot stand to be around each other, but there is always hints at a past between them and just a whole lot of tension. So everybody was so excited for this book, me included. I thought that this was going to be my favourite book. I thought they were going to be my favourite couple. But unfortunately it just felt a little bit short for me. It kind of just felt like we were getting so much of the other characters in this book. Like, I get that it's a series and it's the end of that series and you kind of want to wrap it all up, include all of the characters, but it felt like we didn't even get a snippet of their relationship until like 2/3 into the book, and then all of a sudden we were just supposed to buy it. But it was also very much centered around physical attraction, which is fine, but also they had built up this huge past, this huge relationship, all of this tension in the other books, just for it to kind of seem purely physical. So I don't know, I didn't love this one unfortunately, which I was really disappointed about because I thought that I would. But I did still end up rating it like a 3.75, I think, just because I do love this world. But one thing about Lucy Score's writing that I will always say is that the books are so unnecessarily long. I feel like you could always in any of her books take out like 100 pages at least. Then next up I kickstarted my spooky thriller sort of reads. Do have a reading vlog on that if you want to go and watch that. So I read The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. This was my first Freida McFadden book. I've heard a lot of people hype her up, hype her writing up, and I did think that it was really easy to read. I do love a thriller, I just don't seem to read very many of them. But this basically follows a maid, I literally can't think what her name is. Is it Molly? Millie, okay, she's called Millie. This follows Millie, who is like an ex-convict, and she's trying to find a job, and she basically gets hired to be a maid for this really rich family. But not everything is as it seems, and the wife of the family that she is like maiding for, I guess, is a little bit strange, a little bit weird. Things are going on, there's a husband. There was a lot of twists and turns in this one. I did guess a few of them, but I did think that it was an easy read. It was gripping, it was entertaining, but I think I ended up rating it about a 3 stars. It kind of just fell in the middle for me. It was quite average, but I did enjoy it and it made me want to read more of her books. So they were all of the physical books that I read in September. For Kindle reads, I read Out on a Limb, which I absolutely loved. I really didn't think that I was going to, because it does have a sort of like unexpected surprise pregnancy trope. That's not a spoiler, that is literally what the whole book is about. I had seen so many people talking about it and I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna have to give it a read. I was getting FOMO. So it follows Win and Bo, who meet at a Halloween party, have a one night stand, then end up having a baby. And it kind of follows them through their pregnancy and sort of their relationship. And like I said, I don't normally like that kind of trope, but oh my god, the guy in this boat is just the greenest flag I've ever seen. And it kind of was like friends to lovers. Like obviously they have a one night stand, but then they kind of like co-parent, and it just absolutely got me. Like the way that he talked about her, the way that he acted around her was insane. And I loved it. I think I gave it about a 4.5, 4.75. Okay, and then I read the Eden series, which is at the minute a 5-book series, I think. And I read them all on Kindle. I'm not going to talk too much about each individual book because I didn't really love the series as a whole, but I do have a thing where I can't not finish a series. So I just had to keep on reading the books even though I wasn't particularly loving them and I didn't really care about any of the characters, to be honest. I would say it was kind of like a 3.5 series as a whole, but I obviously did have some favourites in between there. The Edens are like one of the biggest families in the town. They're kind of like a founding family, I think. They own like everything. They have a ranch, they have cafes, they have restaurants, they have hotels, everything like that. And each book does follow each of the Eden siblings. So the first one follows Win and Griff. Win moves to the town. Griff is kind of like a grumpy rancher. She is a police woman, and there's kind of like an underlying mystery which kind of confused me a little bit because it just didn't seem to have any kind of relevance to the rest of the plot, but she's trying to solve that this incident, murder, whatever happened on his property. So that's how they kind of like start getting together, I suppose. It's kind of like a friends with benefits situation to begin with. And yeah, I just didn't love it. I think I rated it like a 3 stars. Then the second book follows Knox, who is another one of the Eden brothers, and Memphis, who again just moves to the town. She is working in the hotel that the Edens own, and he runs the restaurant that is like connected to the hotel. And she also is living like on his property. He has like a big ranch type thing, I think, and there's like a separate apartment, so she moves into there. And yeah, then they're also like working together in the same hotel. Again, didn't really love this one. I did prefer this one to the first one, but I just wasn't like getting excited about the couple. I felt like I just wasn't rooting for them. I did really enjoy how he was towards her as like a single mother, but again, don't really love kids in books. So then the third book, Garnet Flats, I did not really enjoy. It follows Talia, which is the first sister that we get in the book, and Foster, who she kind of had a relationship before, so it's like a second chance romance, but he essentially went off and married her best friend. Again, that's not a spoiler, you find that out straight away. It is literally on the back of the book. But I don't know, this one for me was probably the least favourite, just because they were literally together for a year. They then pined supposedly after each other for like 7 years, and then when he came back, he just expected her to like forgive him straight away, even though he literally married somebody else, her best friend, no less. And then the next one, the fourth book, is Jasper Vale, and that follows Jasper and Eloise. Eloise is again one of the Eden sisters. I think this one is actually my favourite. So it's kind of like fake dating, which I don't usually love, but they end up getting married on a whim in Vegas, and then she doesn't want her family to think that she is like irresponsible. She is the sibling that runs the hotel, so they essentially then pretend that they are together so that they don't think that of her, because she just went and got married randomly. Like fake date for a little bit. It's kind of like friends with benefits. Is it going to turn into more? Is it not? Are they going to get divorced? Blah, 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 blah. I enjoyed this one more than the others, but it still wasn't like a standout book, a standout couple for me. The final one is Crimson River. So this one again follows Lila, who is again one of the Eden siblings, and Vance, who is a police officer from like an outside town. Again, this one had like a weird little crime element in it that doesn't really make sense to like the wider series, but whatever. So she essentially is going on a hike and some random man is there, tries to strangle her. And then this policeman, Vance, comes in and is trying to find this man. And yeah, so it kind of had, again, that underlying like crime theme whilst they are navigating their relationship. Like I said, I didn't really love them. I loved the setting, like the actual town of Quincy where all of these take place. Loved that, but I just didn't love the couples, didn't love the storylines. So I don't know, it was a little bit of a miss for me. There is another book coming out, I think towards the end of this year, which I will probably still read, that follows Mateo, and I think that will be the last book of the series. So they were all of the books I read in September. Now going on to October reads. So I read 12 books in October. I did not realise I had read this many. I think it's because some of them were, like I said, on Kindle and audiobook. So I only kind of was counting the physical books. So this is probably going to be a long one, so I apologise about that. So we'll start with the physicals first. Kind of carrying on with my spooky reads, I read The Kiss Curse. I read The X-Hex last year and I really enjoyed it. I know that that kind of gets mixed reviews because I don't really know what people were expecting, like if they thought it was going to be literary genius and like the best couple ever. But for me, I kind of went into them both thinking that they were just going to be like a cute, fluffy, spooky themed romance, and that is exactly what they delivered on. So The Kiss Curse follows Gwyn, who is the cousin of the girl in the first book, and Wells, who is the brother of the guy in the first book. It's set in the same little town in Graves Glen, and just all of the Halloweeny witchy vibes are just on point. Like I really enjoyed this. I think I rated it about a 4 stars because it delivered on everything that I wanted it to deliver on, but I probably won't like ever go back and read it again or kind of like think about it apart from at Halloween. Then I read The Dead Romantics. I really loved this one. So this follows Florence, whose family own a funeral parlour. She essentially moved away from her hometown because she could see ghosts. Her dad also could see them, but she was kind of coined as like the town freak because she could talk to ghosts. So she moved away, she moved to New York, and she is a ghostwriter for a really famous author. She goes for a meeting one day to meet her editor, Benji. They have like a little bit of a tiff, and then she is going back home because she needs to be with the family. And when she gets there, Benji turns up as a ghost. So yeah, it is a strange one. You are essentially seeing a kind of like budding relationship, a budding romance between Florence and Benji, who is dead. He is a ghost. This one really broke my heart because I was literally rooting for them to be together so much. But yeah, I do feel like the ending was maybe like a little bit predictable, but also it was the ending that I was wanting, so I'm not going to complain. I think I gave this like a 4.75. And then I went on to Too Late by Colleen Hoover. So this one I went into kind of thinking that it was going to be another psychological thriller similar to Very. It was not in fact that. It is like coined as a dark romance but with a psychological suspense element. It follows Sloane and her boyfriend Asa, who is like a drug dealer. She is kind of in this toxic abusive relationship with him. And then this guy, Carter, comes in, who is an undercover police officer, DA agent type thing. And they are like living in the same like college house. I don't know, this one was just not what I expected at all. And I also did not particularly like any of the characters like at all. So I was disappointed by this one. I think I gave it like a 3. And then the last physical book that I read was Hopeless by Elsie Silver, and I absolutely love this one. If you don't know, this is the 5th and final book in the Chestnut Spring series. The Chestnut Spring series follows the Eaton brothers, who are kind of like cowboys. They own a ranch. There are 3 actual Eaton brothers, and then we get one book on Jasper, who is kind of like their honorary brother, and then another book on Theo, who is like best friends with one of the brothers. But this final book follows Bo, who is one of the Eaton brothers, and he is like a military hero. We see little bits of him in the other books, and he is kind of like this happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but then something happens in his like military career. All of a sudden you kind of see him take a turn. He becomes very like withdrawn and misunderstood and a bit angsty. So we have seen a lot of him in other books, and I know that everybody was waiting for his book. And in my opinion, this one did not disappoint. I will say it wasn't really what I was expecting from his book, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. So this one follows Bo and Bailey. Again, we see Bailey in a few books as well. She is like a bartender. She is from a troubled family. She's kind of thought of as trash, to be honest, because of her family. So they get into like a little fake dating thing where Bo's kind of looking for something to do, and Bailey wants to prove that she can't get anywhere in life purely because of the family that she was born into. So they get fake engaged. They are fake dating, but the lines kind of blur because they start living together. Things are obviously going on, developing between them. But I did really enjoy this one. Like I said, it wasn't really what I was expecting from Bo's book, but I just loved it. I loved him, and in my opinion, this is how a series should kind of round up, whilst giving the characters that everybody's been waiting for the story they deserve, whilst also still touching on other couples so that you get that whole kind of like bigger picture and wrap up the series well. I just love this, and I am not ready to say goodbye to the Chestnut Springs series because I absolutely am obsessed. I did give that one about a 4.5, I think, just because it still does not top Heartless and Powerless for me, but I did love it. Okay, and then Kindle reads, I read the Cat and Mouse duet, Haunting and Hunting Adeline, which were a new experience to say the least. So they are dark romance books. The first one, Haunting Adeline, is essentially a stalker romance. The girl, Adeline, moves into a new house and she basically gets a stalker. And the stalker, Z, he kind of like runs this huge tech firm type thing, but he is kind of notorious for outing dodgy government people. It does also have like a side plot kind of thing, I guess, that has to do with like trafficking, child exploitation, things like that, so I would be mindful of that going into it, because we have that on top of a stalker romance and it is a little bit much. But yeah, he essentially is her stalker, so you have that plot and then you have the like trafficking kind of plot as well. The first book was a little bit much for me anyways. I just don't think I'm a dark romance girl. There was a lot of topics in there that I kind of like was just a little bit like, it's not really for me. And then the second book was even worse. I literally hated every single moment of it. The first book I can understand more of because there is still kind of like a romance element. But the second book, I don't really want to spoil anything, but it kind of follows more of the themes that we have seen in the first book. But it is so graphic and so extreme for no reason, and I hate how it is coined as a dark romance when it is quite literally disgusting. And then I moved on to Butcher and Blackbird, which is kind of described as like a serial killer rom-com type thing. It follows two serial killers, but they are like serial killers that kill other serial killers, I guess. So it follows Sloane and Rowan, and they essentially meet and they kind of start up like a little competition where every year they're given someone to kill, and it's like a competition of who can kill them first. But yeah, I did actually really enjoy this one. It is obviously quite gruesome because you are literally dealing with two serial killers, but I thought it was entertaining. It gave the Halloweeny vibes, and I did enjoy the romance between them as well. It is more of like a slow burn type vibe. I think I ended up giving it like a 4 because I don't think I will really think about it in the future, but whilst I was reading it I did enjoy it. Okay, so then I have 4 audiobooks that I listened to. I'm just going to quickly reel them off. I'm not going to talk about them too much. But I do listen to all of my audiobooks on BookBeat. I do also have a link where you can get a 30-day free trial if you sign up using that link, so I'll leave that down below. But the first one that I read was The Wife Upstairs by Freida McFadden. This one kind of gave me Verity vibes, but just not as good. It kind of felt a little bit like a copy and paste of Verity, tried to be like Verity but didn't quite hit the mark. It did obviously have different plot twists and different turns and stuff, but I did feel like it was pretty predictable. There was maybe only like one twist that I didn't get or something. I do not remember a single one of the characters' names, but it essentially follows a husband and a wife. She is very severely ill and like she can't really do anything for herself, so she comes in to be her carer basically. But yeah, all is not what it seems. There are issues with the husband and wife. Again, I think I gave this one like a 3, maybe a little bit lower, because like I said, it did just feel similar to Verity and I just didn't really love it. And then I also listened to The Inmate by Freida McFadden. So this follows Brooke and Shane. Shane is in prison for I think murder and attempted murder, and Brooke is the new prison doctor, but she is also the person that sent Shane to prison. So he was accused of the murder of like 4 of their friends maybe, like back when they were in high school, and the attempted murder of her as well, but he maintains his innocence. He says it isn't him, but it kind of follows her dealing with him in prison, and then there's like other plot twists that come about and you're kind of figuring out who actually is the killer, what happened that night. There was a lot of twists and turns and it was very fast paced and I did enjoy it, but I did guess majority of them, I would say, up until maybe like there was 2 plot twists at the end that I remember that I did not guess, but the rest of them, it did feel a little bit predictable for me, but like I said, it was still very fast paced. And then I listened to 2 books by Lisa Jewell. So first I listened to None of This Is True. So this one follows Alex and Josie. They essentially meet at a pub because it is both of their birthdays. They are out celebrating their birthdays. They start talking. Alex is kind of like I don't know if she would be classed as an influencer, but she has like a podcast. Josie, once she bumps into her, does like a little bit of research on her and finds out that she does have this podcast. And it's kind of about like empowering women, women's life stories, things like that. And then Josie kind of gets a little bit strange and wants to go on this podcast. So she does end up going on Alex's podcast, but there is kind of like more underneath the surface to do with like her husband and her children and her life and her upbringing. But the way that it was done in like a podcast format, I did really enjoy. But I did feel like it was a little bit, again, predictable. I don't know, but I feel like I wasn't really shocked by the ending or the plot twists, but I did still really enjoy this one. And then the final book that I listened to was The Family Upstairs, also by Lisa Jewell. This one was really confusing for me. There was a lot of different point of views and a lot of characters, as well as like a now and then timeline. So the now timeline is basically there's a girl called Libby who is adopted, and she essentially finds out about her birth parents. And then the then timeline is about this house, and 25 years ago the police were called to this house and they find like a 10-month-old baby and 3 dead bodies, and the other children in the house were gone. They didn't know who some of the people were that were dead. They didn't know who this baby really was or what had happened. So it follows like those 2 timelines and like how they obviously interlink, but it did just feel a little bit confusing to me. I did enjoy it again. I really like Lisa Jewell's writing style, but it kind of just felt a little bit messy and a little bit all over the place, and there was quite a few like plot holes, and I'm not normally one to like think too much about plot holes, but I think it was because it was already confusing that things just weren't really like adding up. But yeah, they are all of the books that I read in September and October. I did not realise there was quite so many. As always, if you want to stay more up to date on what I'm reading, reviews, everything like that, then follow my book Insta. I am so much more active on there. I update literally every book that I read with reviews, ratings, everything like that. But thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.